Wednesday, April 29th. Just one more day of April, and then May Day. I'm Doug Hagmann with Joe Hagmann, my son, fellow investigator, fellow researcher. We're coming to you live from the studios of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Together, folks, Joe and I, we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, America's premier father-son investigative reporting team. Now, our job is to bring you the news that shapes the headlines, the news that is shaped and twisted and convoluted, contorted and hidden amid a funhouse of smoke and mirrors in the carnival we call the corporate media. You know, we do the headline and news triage so you don't have to. We'd like to, again, thank all of our new listeners for checking in with us from all over the world. Thank you so much. We got so many letters, actually, in the mail, so many great notes, kind notes. Thank you for those. For new listeners, we broadcast live every Monday through Friday from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern. Of course, our home base on the Internet is HagmannandHagmann.com. That's Hagmann and Hagmann.com. You got to spell it all out. Okay, 2 N's on Hagmann, the word and. So, together, HagmannandHagmann.com. Crunch it all together. From our home base, you can access it live as well as all of our past shows. You can also grab us on SoundCloud and BTR. So it's all there. And, of course, all of our links to our partners and sponsors are on that page as well from our home base.
Yeah. So, and we get a lot of people who listen to us via YouTube, and seemingly they find us through YouTube. Many times inadvertently, looking for something else, they come across us, and they at least 5 to 10 emails a day. I get people asking, well, we find you on YouTube, and we see that your shows are on there, but they're not always up to date. For those people, I would, if you don't have iTunes and you're not familiar with downloading podcasts, just go to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report and go to the SoundCloud on the top right. All the shows are archived right there. It's very simple.
Or yeah, I mean, actually, it says RSS feed there. It's BTR, and a couple of things. A little bit of housekeeping here, John. I'm glad you mentioned that because a lot of times people have issues with file sizes. Now, BTR, the form or the platform we're broadcasting on now, that you're listening to us now from, when they archive the files, you're looking at roughly 165 megabyte files, give or take. Okay. There you can download the files in MP3 format or WMA, okay, Windows Media format. Now, SoundCloud, what we do is we manually decrease the file size and upload them to SoundCloud. And there you can embed them and download as well, the same thing, okay? But the file sizes are a third of what's on BTR. So I want to make that clear to people, all right? Because if you've got a specific device or instrument you're using that, or if bandwidth is an issue, so take advantage of SoundCloud. I mean,
it's a tool we utilized for convenience. It's a tool that is easy for us to. I mean, Blog Talk archives our own show via podcast through their RSS feed and onto iTunes, but SoundCloud is just a quick way for us to take that archive or MP3 and upload it and make it accessible right through our site.
Right. And sometimes, usually the previous day's programs are up by 7 o'clock the next morning. Sometimes it's might be 11 o'clock. But they're, if you want it sooner than that, of course, BTR has them within, I think, 15 minutes. So that's a good way to do it. And also, we're going to be making a few adjustments and having a specific YouTube channel that will be, that's all I'm going to say, because we'll announce it when the time is ready. And I just want to thank everyone for your prayers. We're going to be moving forward with making plans to be on the air.
Yeah, share the good news.
Well, the good. I mean, the news is this: we are going to. We were successful in I don't want to jinx anything. No, that's being superstitious, and we're not that. But hopefully, if all goes well, sometime around the 11th, we should be in our new studios. And
the hurdles that were in the way that seemingly were going to prohibit us from being able to move and expand to a new studio, those restrictions disappeared. Was it yesterday? The day before?
Well, yeah, it was yesterday, and I had talked to Pastor Lankford about it, and I thanked him for his advice and prayers, and Steve Quayle, and and it was interesting. I used the word suddenly in the conversation with Pastor Lankford, and he says, "Oh, I love that word," because suddenly things had happened that made way for us.
And it really was through prayers. And you were talking with, you asked Dr. Michael Lake, you talked with Pastor Lankford on air, asking, pertaining to, how do you know if you're doing God's will or if something is God's will versus your will? And I know you weren't talking about this to the public, but you were wondering in your mind, so I could hear you think, is the studio move something that the Lord wants us to do, or is this something that we just want to do or think we need to do?
Yeah, and therein lies the difference, and that's something that we always, because we're a listener supported show, we really pray a lot and consider a lot. I mean, we don't really spend a dime, unless we believe it's going to advance the objectives of the show, make it bigger, touch more people, have a better penetration. And only why? Well, obviously in these times, of these rough times, to bring people closer to God for salvation purposes. And speaking of that, Pastor Lankford and Steve Quayle are going to be on Friday, May 1st. But anyway, go ahead.
I was going to say, how do you justify the spending for that grumpy grandpa coffee mug you got?
Actually, that was a gift.
No, I know.
Yeah, I do have. I'm drinking right now from.
That's an awesome coffee mug. I look at that every day and
I think how appropriate.
Smile.
Right?
Yeah.
Born Grumpy, it says, and it's actually my wife picked it up for me from, or my daughter did. I'm sorry, no, from Orlando when we were down there for the conference. She picked it up and said, "This is pretty appropriate for you," and there you have it. So anyway, so that's kind of the news, if you will, so far. And so we just want to let you know that we are preparing for a time. And you might say, we might ask, well, how do you prepare for a time if you can't broadcast? Well, obviously there are other methods of getting the word out, and that involves, for example, DVD, CD duplication, and mass, mailings, if you will, or thumb drives, and what have you, and paper, even good old-fashioned paper, right? Mm-hmm. And even if we have to use, I still have, when I was an investigator, my old Smith Corona typewriter. So I can go that route too. But this will give us the ample space for video, certain video. That's not to say that we're going to have the program on video, but we can certainly turn out more videos. And to that end, no, I'm going to leave that. I'm going to leave that alone for right now. I'm going to leave that alone because I don't want to. I don't want to put a clarion call out for something I'm not going to have time for in the next 10 to 12 days. Anyway. I would like to just remind everyone that tonight's broadcast, in part, sponsored by Pro Flowers. What a great company. What a great idea. Guys out there, Mother's Day is coming. You can celebrate Mom through Pro Flowers. Can you believe it? Seriously, it's not that far off. But you don't need a reason for flowers. You never need a reason for flowers. My mom, she loved flowers. God bless her. She loved flowers, and she loved getting flowers from my dad. She just, it just made her day. My wife loves it. Tell me a woman.
My wife loves the flowers too.
Tell me a woman who doesn't love flowers, right? Everyone loves flowers. So My
grandma didn't love flowers.
Yeah, well, your
you remember that? Why you buy me flowers? You're just gonna
die. Yeah, your grandmother was special indeed. Yeah, but you know, seriously, when you brought her flowers and she would leave, or you would leave, if I would come in after you or whatever, she'd say, "Hey, look what Joe brought me."
Yeah, she did appreciate them.
Yeah, she did. But everyone appreciates flowers, and if you appreciate Mom, remember all the things that she's done for you. Visit proflowers.com. That's proflowers.com. And here's the important part. You want to give us credit for that? Here's the important part. There's a box. Click on the blue microphone in the top right corner and type in our word Hagmann, Hagmann. That's proflowers.com. Click on the microphone, type in Hagmann. More on Proflowers later. We got a great show for you tonight. A lot of news taking place. A lot of news that is very deep. Although it seems, if you look at the headlines, if you look at Drudge, and if you follow Drudge, there's a lot of white noise out there covering the news. And
it's not just me rustling papers.
Well, yeah, I mean, things are happening right now, and everyone can feel it. Everyone knows. We don't have to go over this. Everyone can feel the rush, the acceleration of events. Everyone can feel the trepidation. Everyone can feel that something is not right. And let me tell you something. Speaking of something that's not right, the system, and I had told several people this in the quest for obtaining the studio. I have never seen in my life a system that has been so broken. I mean, so broken, so incredibly broken. Which is why a couple of early shows, my frustration showed. And I talked about attempting to get the studio and the hurdles. If one wants to get a mortgage, for example. And we had people on talking about mortgages. But folks, if you out there are looking to get a mortgage or looking to buy a house, maybe it's your first house. Maybe you're listening to this. You're in the United States and you're a young couple listening to this broadcast. And you're thinking, boy, I can't wait to buy our first house. Well, or maybe you're a retired couple downsizing and saying, I'm going to buy a house, but you might need a mortgage. Okay. Well, I'll say this. Times have changed. If you haven't bought a house in 20-some years, hint, like us, okay, boy, be ready. Be ready for some absolute positive surprises. And Joe has some information about the criminalization of cash. We're going to be getting into tonight the homosexual agenda. This is a hot topic, but this is a game changer, okay? This is a huge game changer. But before we get into this and pay this give this the investigative report that it deserves, we were talking earlier before the program started about the criminalization of cash. This is how we as Christians are going to be forced to either take the mark of the beast or to be criminals.
Yeah. Now I want to back this up just a second for any new listeners or people who might have heard, criminalization of cash and just pluck their eyes out thinking, how and is that even conceivable? Well, you start back looking at what money was, money, currency throughout history, which has been, usually goods and services, gold and silver, from, recorded history until the 1900s.
Most people think gold and silver in terms of tangible money. And
before the Industrial Revolution, lots of people would trade, work for food. If there was a carpenter who, somebody wanted a porch built, the carpenter would build a porch, and for the farmer, and the farmer would trade with food. They'd have an exchange of goods for services. And well, then the Federal Reserve Bank came around in 1913.
Right.
Established themselves, and in Europe, these were the banksters, gangsters, if real word, if you want to call them, the destroyers of the people, and they've been destroying and looting and robbing the people through their labor forever. But what they did was turn this system, and they call it a magical system, of money, and this is paper money. All the people out there in the listening audience, just look at a piece of paper near you. They devised a plan to take tangible money, which would have been gold or silver, and to make people believe that a piece of paper is worth as much as the gold or silver.
Right.
So they established in 1913 the Federal Reserve Bank, which is an international, not tied to the United States, as many people think. I think Alex Jones uses the expression, it's like Federal Reserve.
Federal Express.
Federal Express. It is completely independent, and it is an international organization that is full of people that have compiled the IMF and even the Trilateral Commissions, the CFR, the Bilderbergs, the global elite. And what they have done is, through periodic steps from the 1934 Tax Act to Nixon taking the gold standard off the dollar, they have created a system of money in the richest nation in the history of the world and created a debt instrument out of that money.
Well, money, and look into your wallet and take a bill out. What does it say? Federal Reserve what? Note. What's a note? As people know, a note, anyone who's ever signed anything, any legal contract knows that a note is a debt.
Absolutely. And what they've done with that is been able to accumulate all the real wealth, all the real assets and wealth, land, gold, with their fake money, turn around and give the funny monopoly money to the people, such as us, to use as money.
Quickly,
I read a quote
in short,
from a Rothschild one time.
They've taken all the gold and silver and issued IOUs, and then repothecated the IOUs, meaning that they've inflated the number of times they can lend out the same dollar to people.
Right. They have all the real assets and money worth everything, and all the rest of us, no matter how much money it says we have in our bank account, are holding debt.
Yes.
And they've done this for a purpose. And we're coming to the head of the origin. Back in 1913, the Creature from Jekyll Island, G. Edward Griffin wrote a book explaining who these money masters were. And they've created this money out of thin air. They create it through fractional reserve banking, which is a whole another show to get into. But the point of this is cash being criminalized, cash being under attack, or the war on cash, as the headline reads today. The war on cash escalates. The paper money now is too easy to be obtained by illegal means. Meaning,
exactly.
The drug trade, the human trafficking trade, or even legitimate work being paid in cash. The government can't keep track of all the dollar bills that are out there, or where they came from and how you got them. Therefore, you need to have a system that does away with their inability to monitor all, and implement a system where they know where every penny comes from, why it went there.
If I can interject something here right now, the reason that this is ramping up today is because more people right now are hoarding cash. Just want to tell you that. Go ahead, Joe.
No, absolutely. They, like in New Orleans, for example, in Louisiana in particular, the state of Louisiana, but New Orleans, a city, the stories come out where garage sales are illegal because, folks, you can't buy things with cash anymore. They don't want the exchange of cash without the government being involved. Anybody knows when you go to a store, when you purchase a service or a good from a supplier, you have to pay a tax. The states have their own taxes. The federal government has their own taxes. Well, how can you tax a cash transaction from, somebody who is doing work under the table, we'll say, or somebody who is selling something secondhand? Or, it could be from the worst illegal way of obtaining the money to the most legal way. I guess I didn't articulate that well, but it doesn't matter. The point is, the cash is, and you went through this with the whole mortgage thing. We were talking about why, you and me were talking about why is it that there was such a hard time with the banks about obtaining this studio, and they wanted IRS records, this and that. Well, it had to do with transaction, and this has to do with Ken Hovind when he's in jail.
Very much, and therein, see, all of this is related. We talk about Ken Hovind, and you talk about, and please be very, very aware of this. You can, without even knowing it, violate federal law with the best of intentions.
Well, what did they say? That John Stossel did a report that said the average American commits three felonies a week.
It was some incredible number. And
that's the most. He's talking about the most law-abiding citizen that out there.
Well, just to give you one example, and this was a hypothetical example, and I mentioned this before, but it really bears repeating because this is the criminalization of cash. This is going to be. I mean, this is one of the things that is going to play into this entire picture. And Joe, before you get into that, you were mentioning this. You were mentioning about the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve Act was implemented in 1913.
Yeah, it's a system, a central bank of the United States. It was founded by Congress in 1913 to provide the nation with a safer, more flexible, more stable monetary financial system. Over the years, its role in banking and the economy has expanded.
Right.
And this is a history of the Federal Reserve from their own publication. Today, the Federal Reserve duties fall into four general areas: conducting the nation's monetary policy by influencing the monetary and credit conditions in the economy, supervising and regulating banking instruments to ensure safety and soundness of the national banking and financial system, maintaining stability of the financial system, and providing financial services to depository institutions, U.S. government, foreign officials, including playing a major role in operating the nation's payment system.
Okay, now stop there for a second. I know that might seem like an arbitrary place to stop.
No.
But now, in 1933, I should say that if you study and get J. Edward Griffin's book or any book about the Federal Reserve, you'll see that there were attempts to create central banks throughout America's history. And there were opponents to this and proponents to this. And, of course, the Titanic fits into this. How so? Well, the opponents of the Federal Reserve System, the majority of the families, the very powerful families who were opposed to the Federal Reserve Act, actually were on board the Titanic, which inexplicably went down amid a sea of icebergs, going full throttle in the middle of the, in darkness, total darkness. But hey, that's just a coincidence, right? Okay, well, from there. Of course, the Federal Reserve Act was passed in 1913. Wilson did a mea culpa, after as he was leaving. Of course, you had Colonel Edward Mandell House involved in this, and other players. But fast forward to 1933, the Glass-Steagall Act was implemented, and that really is a compilation of four specific aspects of the U.S. Banking Act, the 1933, that is, that place limits on commercial bank securities activities, okay? In other words, you couldn't mix stuff. You couldn't mix insurance and banking, stocks and banking. You couldn't make your banks into a casino. Well,
what they say here is that key laws affecting the Federal Reserve have been from the Banking Act of 35, the Employment Act of 46, the Bank Holding Company of 56, International Banking Act of 78. And they go on to state that all these laws have been adopted to include and for the purpose of economic growth and the economy's potential to expand, and also for the Federal Reserve, as it is independent, it is also for profit.
Right.
But the system serves the U.S. government, and it must work within the framework of overall objectives and economic financial policy established by the government, in their own words. But their system that they have structured, what they have put together, is basically a fourth branch of the government. We have the judicial, we have
executive, legislative, and bang, you've got, well, actually maybe the sixth, or that should be the first, and the other one would be the media. But
you have Congress and Senate, which is the legislative. You have the judicial, which is the judges, Supreme Court, all the way down. You have the executive, which is the president, and all the government agencies that
under that,
like FDA, EPA. But there isn't no place the Federal Reserve falls under, except it would be the fourth system, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, but moving forward with this, and this is important for people to really fully grab and understand. Back in the 90s, you had a situation with the Citicorp, this commercial bank holding company, merged with the Travelers Group. I don't know how many people remember that. This is back in the mid to late 90s. And what happened was Citigroup was birthed. Well, that was a violation of the Glass-Steagall Act and the Bank Holding Company Act of Glass-Steagall Act of 33, and then the Bank Holding Act of 1956. So what they did was the legislators back then introduced the Graham-Leach-Bliley Act, the GLBA, or you can call it the Financial Services Modernization Act of 1999. And that was signed into law by William Jefferson Clinton in 1999. What this essentially did was allowed all of the banks and insurance companies to consolidate. And for those people out there who say, well, it must have been a progressive democratic initiative. No. This was a globalist initiative that was spearheaded by three Republicans: Phil Gramm of Texas, Jim Leach of Iowa, and Thomas Bliley of Virginia. And they lit the fuse that eventually led to the 2008 collapse of it led to ultimately to what we saw happen in 2008. Now, and of course, the greed of the mortgage lenders, the no-doc loans, and all of this stuff. I mean, it's still going, or it's still out there. Those types of mortgages are still out there, not obtainable, but they still exist on paper in the form of derivatives and toxic derivatives, which, when we talk about this stuff, people don't know what they are, and I had a hard time understanding what in the world these are. So, anyway, to fast forward beyond that. To fix all of this, supposedly, you had the Dodd-Frank Act come into play. Christopher Dodd and Barney Frank, two luminaries, right? Financial classy luminaries. The final portions of the Dodd-Frank Act were implemented in January of 2014, or in the first part of 2014. In 2,000 pages, 250 laws or specific regulations that specifically address the mortgage industry. That's why today, if you are a retiree and you want to buy, downsize and buy a house, or if you're a first-time home buyer and you want to go buy a home, they're going to ask for everything but your firstborn child and your DNA, and pretty soon they'll be asking for your DNA. Trust me on this. And the only thing that's left, and the reason that all of this background was given, come full circle to the criminalization of cash. Because now, let's say you've got, let's say you want to put $5,000 that you had in your mattress down for a down payment or for earnest money on your retirement home. Can't do it. Ain't going to happen. They won't let you. It's against the law.
Mm-hmm.
You know why?
Well,
because they don't know where that money came from.
Yeah. Why is transporting $10,000 cash illegal? Some people say it's a complex question.
Why
is transporting legal U.S. tender illegal? If not, require some sort of approval. Secondly, who sets the number at 10,000? Why is
all of this is arbitrary?
They say, these are comments, these people's articles, speculation. They say it's against the law, but if you get caught with the cash, it's a red flag. They see it as a red flag of illegal activity. The legal significance of $10,000 in cash is that anything purchased in greater than that amount has to be directly reported to the IRS.
Right.
Also, they have what's called civil forfeiture, where police, if they see you with that kind of cash, can seize it from you under the assumption that you've done something illegal.
That's right.
Without any proof. There was actually a state, I think it was Arizona, who recently changed the civil forfeiture laws and asset seizure laws so they cannot seize anything from you until you have been convicted, whereas before you could have your property and money seized without, with just being implicated, with
That's
not
right.
being found guilty, with not committing a crime. But this war on cash, we have an article today titled "The War on Cash Escalates. Chase cracks down on cash. Is your bank next?" The Federal Reserve Bank and its owners, the largest banks on Wall Street, want badly to be able to change your interest for the privilege of depositing your funds. Charge you interest for the ability or privilege to deposit your funds. The problem is getting you to stand for it. Depositors already complain vigorously about 0-point returns on checking and savings account. If they must start actually paying the bank to hold funds on deposit, many will opt out to simply withdraw the cash and stuff it under their mattress or into a safety deposit box. But that simply won't do. The goal is to force you to deposit your cash and to charge you interest. Bankers in the U.S. can learn something from the Swiss. The Swiss National Bank recently implemented negative interest rates without first solving the problem of how to prevent cash from fleeing the banks. Predictably, depositors starting doing the math. One example, a sizable Swiss pension fund calculated it would save 25,000 francs for every 10 million it held in the bank, simply by withdrawing those millions and taking the bales of paper francs to be kept in a vault. The vault storage fees are less expensive than the negative interest rates. Jumping the gun on the implementation of negative rates put the Swiss bank in an awkward situation. Like all fractional reserve lenders, they did not have anywhere near enough cash to make good on the withdrawals that may be coming. The bank holding the pension money had little choice but to refuse the client's demand for their own money.
And this speaks to what's going to be happening here in this country, because when you go to withdraw money, and and I have never been in this position where, they've never balked at my, $60 check, they've never balked at that. But let's say you want $60,000. All right.
I'd be robbing.
Well, they don't have. I mean, see, the fact is they don't have that kind of money at the bank. They have to order that money in. I mean, could you imagine places
having like the perfect bank robbery setup? And I'm not advocating anybody committing the crimes of robbing banks, but just imagine, you got the blueprints and you found a way to dig a hole or however you're going to do it, and you get into that vault and there's like
nothing
$7,000 in there.
Yeah. It's ridiculous, but see, all of this, and this is why it's so important, because what we're going to be seeing here, and this is not to take away from our primary topic, but I think it's so important.
Well, this is important.
What we're going to be seeing here in a very short term is a financial collapse. There are so many other bubbles out there that are getting ready to burst, and this is
Student
kind of
loan bubble, mortgage bubble,
the commercial mortgage bubble, to be more precise.
Yeah, the stock market bubble. There is so many, like you said.
Right. So so when this does happen, this will give the legitimacy to say, okay, we are going to, in order to save the republic, to save the country, and you're going to have a lot of people, a lot of conservatives behind this, a lot of well-meaning conservatives, unwitting dupes actually, behind this to say we're going to just use digital currency, and with that, of course, you will need a specific identification card that will be non-hackable, or that's the way it'll be sold, and your account will be non-hackable, or to make your account non-hackable.
Yeah.
So it goes from a passbook to think of one of those cards, like what do you get, those Starbucks cards where you can reload them, or
rewards cards, or
what do they call those things?
A gift card.
I don't use them, but
a gift card. And you're talking about something where you can buy we'll say a Visa debit card. You can put money on there, give it as a gift, or use it. Some people do that when they travel. Instead of getting the traveler's checks or carrying around cash, they'll purchase a Visa card, and they'll put, $100 to $500, however much money you want to put on there. That way, they don't have to carry the cash, and they have the prepaid money on the card.
Well, yeah. Either way, you're going to be issued a card, and this is how I see it playing out. And we see it playing out. You're going to be issued a card. It's going to have your personal information on there, very specific information, as well as this balance, if you will, of your accounts. So you hand the card over, and they swipe a card, and bang, automatically, whether it's your hotel bill, your car bill, regardless, I mean, you've got this information, or some level of connectivity to a digital database that Stan was talking about last night. But ultimately, because of the illegal immigration, the illegal aliens, the terrorism threat, I mean, insert excuse here. They're going to have to say, well, we're going to have something a little bit more permanent. Everyone is going to have a chip. And how harmless is the chip going to be if we don't make you, if we're not going to cause you to worship the image of the beast? Because there's going to be some blowback to that. But we think by that time there's going to be such an outcry and such a hunger where people will do anything, and the deception will be so great that a lot of people won't see what's coming. But that's the bottom line. This is where this is all is headed. And but there are going to be steps in between. Just to be clear, I don't want people to say, well, that means we're going to be throwing our gold and silver in the streets. No, that comes later. You're going to have a black market, outside of the grid that will be working very strongly, in my view, anyway. So there will be a place for your services, your gold and silver, and even in some cases, some level of, well, I would say, some residual value to even some of the fiat currencies. So there's going to be that. So it's not going to happen, although it could. I don't believe that'll happen right away. I mean, with a 1 minute, one day you're using cash, the next minute no, you're not, or 1 minute you have gold, and the next minute it's worthless. No, you can't use it because of the black market scenario, as well as the incrementalization. Because there are still too many people that are waking up now, and this generation, there's still a number of people today who don't believe in banks, even today. My aunt, for example, she absolutely does not believe in banks, and that creates a lot of trouble for her. I mean, she's elderly.
I mean, think of the past and the history of what banks have done.
Sure.
The Great Depression didn't happen because people decided to stop working.
Yeah.
The depression we just had, the collapse we just had, didn't happen because of less job seekers, less employed people. It happened because greedy people got greedier. And
so it is greed, isn't it?
Absolutely. And here on the Business Insider article from last month, we had just started getting into the war on cash escalates. This article, this is why cash should be illegal, from the Business Insider. That's the title. Should the world go cashless? This subject, which probably would have sounded ludicrous 30 years ago, is seriously being discussed, at least in advanced economies of the world. On a health level, cash is admittedly pretty disgusting. We've developed a system of exchange that requires swapping a thin piece of dirty cloth and grubby chunks of metal gripped in hands, stuffed in sweaty pockets, and then they go make the argument of why it's not sanitary, like that matters. Anyways, they go on to say that's not really a good economic argument against cash. Here's Ed Conway's economics editor at Sky News writing about getting rid of cash in the Times. The idea is not as outlandish as it might seem. Think about it. When was the last time you really needed cash? The majority of our day-to-day transactions now take place using credit cards, contactless payment, and charge cards. Internet banking means you can transfer money to someone in a few clicks. Nowadays, you can even pay people via Twitter and Facebook. Currency has proved useful, but it has just about passed its sell-by date. If the world economy was run by Apple, it would have discontinued cash a long time ago. Of course, that argument that cash is irrelevant, but not that it should be actually banned, for that, Conway leans on rockstar economist Ken Rogoff's recent paper, Cost and Benefits to Phasing Out Paper Currency. This is the conclusion that Rogoff made. Nevertheless, given the role of paper currency, especially large denominational notes, in facilitating tax evasion and illegal activity, and given the persistent and perhaps reoccurring problem of zero bound on nominal interest rates, it is appropriate to consider the costs and benefits to a more proactive strategy for phasing out the use of a paper currency. It's based on two big arguments. One, monetary policy would be easier, and two, cash facilitates crime. The first one, monetary policy would be easier. They said that's because at the moment it's hard to reduce interest rates below zero. If the amount of money in your bank account is actually shrinking, why not turn your cash and essentially hide it from the banks and the negative interest rates? The central bank might want to try and cut interest rates further to boost demand, and it can only do that if there isn't cash around. Two, cash facilitates crime.
Jeez.
Today, the major uses of cash seem to be buried in the underworld of a legal economy. Cash is the easy way to pay for illegal activities without leaving a record, in government at least. Criminal behavior would be much harder to hide if only electronic money existed.
I'd like to do something.
I know what you're thinking.
Okay.
No.
No. Okay. Now, see, this is where a video camera would come in really well in the studios in terms of videotaping our show, which we might do in the very near future.
We used to.
Yeah, we used to. We might do that again. I know that we're going to be, as I said, we're going to be turning out more and more videos because we've got a lot of things to.
And I haven't told you, I've been videotaping you and putting out live stream during the shows for the last 2 years.
So people can see me in my jammies, right?
Yeah, you see these, no.
Yeah, all right.
That would, if I did that, I would run right now.
Oh, and you couldn't run far enough, let me tell you.
Okay, in all seriousness, though. So trying to make cash illegal, trying to make it
that's right,
a dirty thing because of what some people believe, and it's not what some people believe, it is what is the only true thing in this last article I read, that about cash, being its only use is for illegal activity. No, the only use is without leaving a record, is why the government wants to get rid of it. It's not a criminal behavior that is trying to be hid, even though obviously cash is probably used for criminal behavior, but I'm sure other people, drug dealers, prostitutes, however that comes about, will find ways to get credit card machines. And
well, there's going to be another push too, and this is going to become rather cheeky, I suppose, in the near term. You hear the war on drugs. You hear that phrase, that Nixonian kind of evolution from the Nixonian era. How can the argument will be made? Well, if
it's already being made, and I have an example.
Yeah, no one's going to buy a kilo of heroin or cocaine or an 8-ball or whatever using a debit card or some sort of digital currency, right? So that we can actually make inroads against the war on terror. Or war on drugs.
Isn't it legal that as long as you're not caught with the just because there's a transaction that shows that it could be. As
long as the drug dealer reports the.
What if he misrepresented made a mistake on, when you buy something from the.
Sure.
You travel, you go to a hotel, sometimes it shows up as some odd named charge. What if it showed up as, people can make it. There is
people that can
end around.
They will do that. That's right.
And here's an example of what is happening in Louisiana. Louisiana makes it illegal to use cash to buy used goods. Louisiana businesses are suddenly discovering a new law that flew under the radar during the last legislative session.
Now, this is a dated article, though, right?
From April 3rd.
Okay.
Cold hard cash, it's good everywhere you go, right? You can use it to pay for everything or anything. But that's not the case here in Louisiana now. It's a law that was passed during this year's busy legislative session. House Bill 195 says those who buy and sell secondhand goods cannot use cash to make those transactions. And it flew so far under the radar, most businesses do not even know about it. We're going to lose a lot of business, says a Mr. Gundry, who owns the Pioneer Trading Post in Lafayette. He deals in buying and selling used unique second-hand items. We don't want this cash transaction to be taken away from us. It's an everyday transaction, he explains. I think everyone in this business, once they find out about it, there will definitely be a lot of uproar. The law states those who buy and sell second-hand goods are prohibited from using cash. State Representative Ricky Hardy, co-authored the bill, says they give a check or a cashier money order or electronic one of those three mechanisms. Hardy says the bill is targeted at criminals who steal anything from copper to televisions to sell them for a quick buck, having a paper trail while making it easier for law enforcement.
Well, there you go.
Well, let me give you an example. When you steal copper and you go to sell it, they issue you a check.
Well, most of the time, okay, unless you can take it down to Vinny down there at and my apologies to everyone named Vinny, but
they take your ID when you sell things.
Generally, they're supposed to, unless you're dealing on, with a. Generally, Joe. Yeah, I mean, how many times have we seen in our line of work where that doesn't happen?
No, I know, and I mean, it's just so ridiculous.
Well, look, the writing is on the wall, so to speak, and I do see this as being. This is going to. If it doesn't affect you, it'll affect your children. I guarantee it.
And I have a theory, and we can end the conversation on the cash with this. This has nothing to do with money. It has everything to do with RFID.
And that's something that people, yes, RFID, the tracking, thank you for that, because you've done a lot of work on this RFID, and right now we've got, in fact, we're going to need the office/studio just to hold, we're going to have the one wing just to hold all the research documents, which is incredible, on the RFID, the legislation, folks, that you don't even know exists, that have been percolating under, well, shall we say under the radar? Is that?
Oh yeah.
But it is time. Now is the time. And how all of this is, just everyone take a few steps back for a moment and take a look at what's going on in the United States alone with the riots in Baltimore and everything that's taking place. None of this is by accident. None of this is spontaneous disruptions or spontaneous eruptions. All of this has been orchestrated. And, folks, all of this is intertwined. Just hold on to that thought, because by the end of the program you will understand how everything is interrelated and how this particular man in the Oval Office got where he is, was put where he is to implement these very ideals, because this war on cash is very closely related to the cultural war in the United States, which is closely related to our freedoms, including freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and the war on Christians. And the man in the Oval Office is a byproduct of the Central Intelligence Agency. His parents, or those people who were assigned to be his parents, perhaps more likely, with the full knowledge of previous administrations and the power brokers, the people in power, the power elite, the globalists, whether it be George W. Bush, Dick Cheney, it doesn't matter. Hillary Clinton, I don't care who these people are, they all are in on it. So if you think back to your more crass and vulgar days, if that represents you, and you know George Carlin and that infamous George Carlin diatribe where he says, it's a big club and you're not in it. Well, that's exactly right. He, of course, goes on for quite a while, but he makes a good point. But anyway, this is all related, and right now, front and center. And as we get to the 10 minutes away from the top of the hour here, we're going to introduce exactly what's taking place in America here as well. I would like to direct everyone's attention to HagmannandHagmann.com.
There are two articles up there.
Right. One is a reprint from April 23rd of 2012, 3 years ago. Please, if you don't mind, if I can indulge everyone, just to go ahead and read that, and take a look at what was written, because I got a lot of heat over that. Man, did I get a lot of heat over that article. Take a look. It's and pass it along if you feel it's deserving. If you feel it's worthy to do so. And take a look from over the last 3 years and tell me if what wasn't in that article, if that didn't come to pass. And the second new piece of information article up there is actually a YouTube. Now we're going to play the audio from the YouTube because this is going to kick off the second hour. This YouTube addresses our primary topic tonight, and that is the fact that there can be no law. The Supreme Court has no authority to redefine what God has explicitly defined, period. All right? And this, of course, yesterday, and we didn't do this yesterday. There was a lot of, if you looked at what was going on, there was a lot of protest, white noise. There was this blip, this trend, however slight, about the Supreme Court oral arguments. And it'll pass until, of course, the Supreme Court rules that the homosexual marriage is, of course, a right of every American citizen, which they will do by the end of June. I guarantee it, 7-2. That's my guess, 7-2 in favor of homosexual unions or homosexual marriage. Here at the Hagmann Hagmann Report, one of the new rules on the radio, there are only a few. Google is not a verb, and gay does not mean homosexual. Okay, we don't use gay or gay and homosexual are not interchangeable. It's homosexual, period, because words are important. But before we get into the second hour, Greg Jackson, author, commentator, shall I say activist, perhaps? Activist for God. He wrote an 89-word article. Now, we had published this before, but he did create, or he caused to create a YouTube video, which Joe's going to play here very shortly. But Greg Jackson states this with respect to the Supreme Court homosexual marriage issue. We have already lost the marriage debate when we, as self-professing constitutional conservatives, wittingly or unwittingly, perpetuate the toxic, progressive, or liberal, I would say Marxist lie of judicial supremacy. That is, the Supreme Court opinions, are equivalent to the rule of law and must be obeyed by the other two branches the moment they are issued. Now think about that, please. This is extremely important. This is the actual golden nugget. We've lost the marriage debate when we, as self-professing constitutional conservatives, or Christians even, perpetuate the toxic lie, call it liberal, call it progressive, call it Marxist, but it's a lie nonetheless, of judicial supremacy. There is no judicial supremacy. That is, with reference to judicial supremacy, that Supreme Court opinions are equivalent to the rule of law and must be obeyed by the other two branches the second they're issued. Now, words matter. We must stop using language like, and I'll quote this, if the court overturns marriage, end quote, or, begin quote, or when the court legalizes same-sex marriage, end quote. I'll give you another example, quote, when the court strikes down traditional marriage, end quote, and so on. When those phrases when those statements are uttered, we imply that the very weakest, by design, by constitutional design, the weakest of the three branches of government actually possess the actual constitutional and legal authority to change, alter, amend, or make actual laws when the Constitution gives them no such power, no such enumerated authority. The judicial branch has no power to make law. So, instead of perpetuating the toxic lie, the toxic Marxist lie, the toxic globalist lie, the toxic liberal lie that even has roped conservatives, including such brainiacs, well-respected conservative commentators are uttering these statements as fact. But instead of perpetuating this toxic lie, that court opinions trump constitutionally enacted laws or statutes, and even the Constitution itself, Greg Jackson writes, "May I humbly submit that we who care deeply about the preservation of the rule of law and the God-ordained institution of natural human family and marriage need to, with one unified and amplified voice, shout, post, and share what you're about to hear right now. In other words, please, folks, listen to this audio clip. Go to HagmannandHagmann.com. Share it on federal, yeah, share it with the federal government. No, share it on Facebook, share it on Twitter, but get the word out. Some people like to listen instead of read. Well, we've got both the transcript as well as the audio. Please use this. It's very succinct, but it strikes at the heart of the matter. Go ahead.
The following is an editorial by author and moral activist Greg.
But until Friday.
Of this Wednesday edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. That sound clip you heard there during the break was Coach Dave Dobbenmeyer. Visit his website at ptsalt.com. That's ptsalt.com for Coach Dave and his website and what he's trying to do, putting players on the field in this battle we are fighting. I want to, we were talking about the Supreme Court decision. They're voting on marriage and if they're going to keep it same-sex marriage or whatever they're going to do with it. I have with me Black Laws Dictionary, the 6th edition. This is a legal dictionary which lawyers use, it has the law in it. It states exactly what the law is and the histories of the law.
And investigators use it.
Yeah, in marriage it says it's a legal union of one man and one woman as husband and wife. And it lists Singer versus Hera, the 11th Washington Appeals Court. And it goes on to say, marriage, as distinguished from the agreement to marry and from the act of becoming married, is the legal status, condition, or relation of one man and one woman united in law for life or until divorced or the discharge to each other and the community of the duties legally incumbent on those whose association is founded on the distinction of sex. A contract according to the form prescribed by law, by which a man and a woman capable of entering into such a contract mutually engage with each other to live their whole lives together in a state of union which ought to exist between husband and wife. The word also signifies the act, ceremony, or formal proceeding by which persons take each other for husband and wife. And it goes to say, see common law marriage. And I go to common law marriage, and it reads as follows. One not solemnized in the ordinary way, but created by an agreement to marry, followed by cohabitation. A consummated agreement to marry between persons legally capable of making a marriage contract. Such marriage requires a positive mutual agreement, permanent exclusive of all others, to enter into marriage relationship, cohabitation sufficient to warrant a fulfillment of necessary relationship of man and wife.
That's marriage by the state, where you go in and get married by a judge or magistrate or whatever.
So nowhere in these, even in the corrupt Babylonian legal system, does it indicate that marriage is anything other than between a man and a woman.
That's right. And nowhere in the Bible is marriage defined as anything else.
Oh yes, it is.
Really?
It's defined as an abomination.
Yeah, well, that's true.
And a sin.
Yeah. Well, okay, so at the close of the last hour, you heard Greg Jackson's, or the product by Greg Jackson, about the definition of marriage and about the Supreme Court decision. Folks, please, Greg urged me to, and I agree with this, I mean, if there's no copyright issues, please post it, send that, whatever, because that really strikes at the core of what we're talking about, that video or that audio clip. But it's actually a YouTube video. It's easy to post on your Facebook page or social networking page, but we have to win on the numbers. We must win on the numbers. We must put so much pressure, because there's only roughly 3% of the population who are homosexual. Now, we've been lied to for so long, saying, well, there's 10%, and there's this latent 10% of the population who are homosexual. It's now not a lie, and we're going to get into this very quickly here. I want to really hit this hard, because the entirety of our nation, I believe, right now, what we're facing right now, is a communist, Marxist, globalist initiative, yes, that will result in judgment by God. And please understand this. God, we've got a long-suffering God, but I'll tell you something, God is not going to be mocked. I mean, Pastor Lankford is very clear, and as others are very clear, God is not to be mocked. And you want to mock God, and this is one way to mock God. And I notice that what really angers me, and maybe I should repent for my anger, but really gets me, are people like Bill Maher and these idiots on television that make light of this subject, or that say that they've got some constitutional right, or they actually remove God from the equation, or the morons, and I mean that by definition, who say, for example, that religion is the cause of all ills. That is such a specious argument. I mean, it's an incredibly it's a fallacious argument. But anyway, if you're a bookophile, or if you like to read, there are a couple of books that I will recommend right now for people to really to grab onto if you want to really dig deep into this. The key book that really is a good book for all matters of morality and godliness, Erwin Lutzer, When a Nation Forgets God. That's number one. Turning the corner now into the issue of homosexuality. Another book, The Homosexual Agenda, by Alan Sears and Greg Olston. That's called The Homosexual Agenda, Alan Sears and Craig Olston. Another book, it's simply titled The Agenda. The subtitle is The Homosexual Plan to Change America, that by the Reverend Louis P. Sheldon. Now, I must say that Reverend Sheldon, I found a passage in this book which is incorrect. It relates to McCarthy as being the head of the House Un-American Activities Committee, which is incorrect. So that was one of the. I don't know why I just want to mention that there was an error in that book, but that's called The Agenda. Another book, The Criminalization of Christianity.
Is it Lou Dobbs?
No. This is The Criminalization of Christianity by Janet L. Folger. You might know her. You know why you might know her? Because remember the clips we've been playing? The F2A.org, Freedom to Action, F2A.org. We're going to be resuming them again here shortly. You know those clips? That's her website. But she's the author of the book, The Criminalization of Christianity. In another interesting book, although perhaps tangential to the American plight, but historically accurate, in my view, The Pink Swastika, Homosexuality in the Nazi Party. This by Scott Lively and Kevin Abrams.
The only good thing the Nazis did is make themselves unable to procreate.
Well, yeah.
No.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, apologize.
All right. But
there's an article, too, here. We will not obey. Christian leaders threaten civil disobedience if Supreme Court legalizes gay marriage. I'm reading the headline.
Okay.
If the Supreme Court legalizes homosexual marriage,
right.
On the Hagmann and Hagmann language. It goes on to say, we will not obey. That's a blunt warning of a group of prominent religious leaders sending the message to the Supreme Court of the United States as they consider same-sex marriage. We respectfully warn the Supreme Court not to cross that line. Read a document titled Pledge in Solidarity to Defend Marriage. We stand united together in defense of marriage. Make no mistake about our resolve. While there are many things we can endure, redefining marriage is so fundamental to the natural order and common good that this is the line we must draw and one we cannot and will not cross, the pledge states. The signees are a who's who of religious leaders, including former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee, U.S. Senator Rick Santorum, national religious broadcaster Jerry Johnson, Pastor John Hagee, Franklin Graham, President and CEO of Billy Graham Evangelist Association. It goes on to say the pledge was co-drafted by Deacon Keith Fournier, a Catholic deacon, Matt Staver, the founder of the Liberty Council. Also involved in the document were Rick Scarborough, the president of Vision America Action, and James Dobson, the founder of Family Talk Radio. It goes on to say, we're sending a warning to the Supreme Court and, frankly, any court that crosses the line on the issue of marriage. Staver told me. He said once same-sex marriage is elevated to the level of protected status, it will transform the face of society and result in the beginning of the end of Western civilization. You are essentially saying that boys and girls don't need moms and dads, that moms and dads are irrelevant, Staver said. Gender becomes pointless when government adopts same-sex marriage. It creates a genderless relationship out of a very gender-specific relationship. It says it doesn't matter and that two moms or two dads are absolutely equivalent to a mom or a dad. It goes on to state the institution of marriage is fundamental and must be defended. It's the foundation for the entire culture. It's been in existence for at least 5,000 years. If you weaken it or if you undermine it, the entire super specter can come down. We see it as that important. And they go on to talk about the civil disobedience part. That means possibly Christians, people of faith, engaging in acts of civil disobedience. Yes, I'm talking about civil disobedience, Staver says. I'm talking about resistance. I'm talking about peaceful resistance against unjust laws and unjust rulings. That's quite a shocking statement, so I asked Mr. Staver to clarify his remarks. He stated, I'm calling people to not recognize the legitimacy of that ruling because it's not grounded in the rule of law. They need to resist that ruling in every way possible. In a peaceful way, they need to resist it as much as Martin Luther King Jr. resisted unjust laws in his time.
Very well stated.
And it goes on to give
we will not comply. And I'll say this, as a business, we don't have. We are not going to recognize the legitimacy of the redefining of marriage. Okay, we're just not going to do that. As Christians, we must not. I'm going to take a little side trip here if I can and let people know, some longtime listeners or some regular listeners know this story. Joe knows most of it. My wife knows most of it. Homosexuality, and this is deeply personal to me. Homosexuality people say, well, it's a lifestyle, it's a choice, it's harmless, it's a victimless. It really is a matter of personal. It's none of anyone else's business what they do in the bedroom. Okay. A lot of times that's their argument. In 1982, my uncle, my dad's brother, was horrifically butchered in his bedroom, which he was living with my dad after my mom passed, and living in the same house. And my father had no idea. My father had no clue that my uncle was living a double life. He was a school principal and a school teacher, elementary school, and he was a homosexual. Well, yeah, my uncle had picked up a trick, I suppose, brought him back to his house, my old house, the house I grew up in the bedroom in which I had so many happy memories. And during the course of the encounter, was stabbed 30 sometimes. His throat was cut. He was mutilated. Afterwards, the assailant took a shower, got cleaned up. Before doing that, however, went and got another blanket and put it over my uncle and stabbed him yet again, and was on the loose for 5 years. I became a licensed private investigator back in 1985, worked with a partner, and we took the case as a cold case 5 years after the fact. In 8 months, we conducted an investigation for 8 months that took me to a couple of different states. In fact, wrote a book on this, and I'm not sure it's going to be published because of what's in it. As a Christian, I'm just don't know. I just don't know. I'm seeking counsel with people like Pastor Lankford and others. But having said that, to believe, ladies and gentlemen, that the homosexual community, the homosexual lifestyle is harmless and does not involve anything else, I can tell you flat out, front out right now, full bore, it's a lie. It involves a lot. Not as a fluke, but as a matter of routine. Because I investigated this issue. And this issue led me to this murder. It led me to other circles of homosexual professionals, if you will. And in every single case, everyone, bar none, I found cases of pedophilia. I found cases of assault and battery. I found cases of intentional infliction of sexually transmitted diseases as a matter of vengeance. I found some of the most horrific, horrible, and unbelievable behaviors. The exploitation of children. And more murder. I had a gun put in my ribs by a member of the homosexual community while I was sitting at a bar investigating this issue in Florida. And you know what the frightening part about that was? It was the brother of a sheriff. And I knew then how big this was. And I'm not trying to hype this up or anything. I didn't fear being shot where I sat, but I certainly had fear of the repercussions outside of that venue. We were followed. We were harassed in our quest to find the killer. which we did, by the way, who's now serving a life sentence in Graterford Prison in Pennsylvania. May God have mercy on his soul. But the fracturing of the family that came with the hidden lifestyle of my uncle is beyond any words that could possibly be spoken. The people that were encountered in this, and I'm not talking about the mafia-style, gang-style, gun-toting people. I'm talking about the professionals in schools, because the investigation led us into schools in Florida, in other states, Ohio, Pennsylvania. It led us to groups where people in authority had authority over children, where child abuse and indoctrination was exposed, but no one acted on it. Much like the Franklin cover-up in real life, in living color. Where a segment of the population in law enforcement actually perpetuated certain crimes, if you will, because of, in advance of, the homosexual nature. And the reason I'm talking about this and being very personal about this is what I learned during that 8 months could fill a textbook. And I think I've got the equivalent of a textbook here. I take it personally when somebody sticks a gun in my ribs. I take it damn personally. I take it personally when somebody takes the memories of my childhood and spatters them in blood of a relative. I take that personally. And you know what else I take personally? I take personally these nitwits who think that they can redefine marriage, who think that they're smarter than God, who have taken on the traditional family, and who think that this is a victimless crime. I take that very personally. I take personally the fact that we've got 300 Republican or conservative leaders filing an amicus brief with the Supreme Court in favor of homosexual unions, starting with Rudy Giuliani. I take that very personally. Shame on them. Shame on every one of you who signed that. I take personally the silence by these nitwits, by these moral degenerates who think it's okay, including the Christians who say, well, who am I to judge? You want to see some crime scene photos? I'll show you crime scene photos. I got them right here. You want to judge? You're going to find out that's not unheard of. It's more the norm than not. You're going to find that it's a mere 3.5% of most of the population who have this gender or this bias toward homosexuality. And homosexuality is steeped in Satanism, ungodliness, uncleanliness. Homosexuality, regardless of what these late-night talk show nitwits talk about, will lead to other things. Bestiality, yes, as incredible as that might sound. Polygamy, it's okay, according to them. But at the core, at the very issue, is when a nation forgets God, the title of a book I mentioned earlier. You know, when oftentimes we compare America to Nazi Germany, and sometimes that's overstated, but not in this case. You know, when we think of Nazi Germany, we think right away of the Holocaust, the brutal murder of millions of Jews and other such undesirables, including the homosexuals. Yet the joke's on them, because read the pink swastika. the homosexuality within the Nazi Party was rampant and steeped in the occult. But we need to realize that there were circumstances in Nazi Germany and widely accepted ideas that enabled the population to become part of an evil that was greater than any one individual. And that's happening in America today. The ovens, the end of the line, the Auschwitz, Treblinka. The ovens there were the end result of certain political and religious trends that made the horrors possible. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor, wrote the following, and I'm going to read this. The gas chambers of Auschwitz were the ultimate consequence of the theory that man is nothing but the product of heredity and environment, or as the Nazis like to say, of blood and soil. I'm absolutely convinced that the gas chambers of Auschwitz, Treblinka, they were ultimately prepared not in some ministry or other of Berlin, but rather at the desks and in the lecture halls of nihilistic scientists and philosophers. That's what's taking place in America today. It's said that God died in the 19th century and that man died in the 20th. For when God is dead, man becomes an untamed bear. Remember the Time magazine piece, God is Dead?
When was that?
That was back, I don't know. I don't have my notes here. It was in the late 1900s. You know, we may never see the extermination of millions, or we may never see a Holocaust here in America. I say may. We might not ever see that. But,
which is a good thing.
Right. But our freedoms are being eroded. And you see, this is not about equal rights, the homosexual agenda here that is being supposedly decided by the Supreme Court. We cannot think of it as some small matter, nor should we. This is going to end up in the criminalization of Christianity, the curtailing and criminalization of certain aspects of our freedom of speech. This is going to change all of society, but even more importantly, in my view, it is going to bring down the wrath and judgment of God. Because how many babies can we kill? Unceremoniously kill. The blood which cries out from the soil, from these abortion mills, these abortion doctors, these mini Mengelas, if you will, who justify these actions. My body, my choice. My body, my choice, my butt. You know, right now, we must stand up and say, you will not redefine marriage. You will keep to what the Bible says. We've got ample evidence. I guess we don't even need it. Just look in the Bible. The Bible itself offers the evidence of what marriage is. And how dare you, Giuliani, or anyone else, how dare you redefine marriage? And and you listening to this program, if you're a Christian listening to this program, and you don't do anything whatsoever to fight this, look, I don't care if you don't think a letter is worth it. I don't care if you don't think a phone call is worth it. Make the phone call, write the letter, write the email, make your voice heard, because when it's all said and done, are your children and grandchildren going to look at you and say, where were you? Why didn't you do anything? Because you see, it's more than, it was never about equal rights. It was never about that. In 1963, 45 goals were read into the congressional record by Representative Herlongen of the 45 goals or planks. One with several or a few were related to the assault on the traditional family, American family, including spreading. I don't have the list in front of me, but you can find it on the internet. And the destruction of the traditional family, the pushing of pornography, and that's the other seedy aspect of homosexuality, the pornography aspect. Pornography in America, the statistics are incredible. Pornography makes more money than the NFL in this country. Think about that.
Think about the fact that, it's offered for free online, on TV. Well, I don't know about TV, but online. I mean, how often do you see these people give things away?
Right. But see, we've been lied to from day one. The entire, and it's important for people to understand, I believe, where if you want to fight the homosexual intellectual argument, you have to be armed with some facts, and I'm just going to give you some key points here. It goes back to the 50s with a guy by the name of Kinsey, Alfred Kinsey. He was a scientist, and of course, a sick one at that. But go figure, I lost my notes here. But Kinsey was big in the sexual experimentation, and that led to, and I guess we don't have to get too far into that, but that led to if it feels good, do it, basically in the 1960s, and the legitimization of the homosexual movement. And by the way, I think what is his name? Bruce Jenner? Is that his name, Bruce Jenner?
That's a guy that has been on TV or on Drudge the last couple of days. Who is he?
Well, wasn't he the guy that was on the Wheaties boxes way back when? He was some Olympic. I remember him, in my younger days, in the Olympics. Now he decides he wants to be a woman. Okay. Anyway. And the fact that we've got, as a result of these current initiatives, we've got the first transgendered bathroom in the White House under the guise of tolerance, under the pretext of tolerance. We're going to have to take a fire hose to the White House after this cretin gets out of there and his people get out of there.
Why, do you think it's going to change when the next person comes in?
Well, then we should take the White House back. And you know what? If that sounds like seditious speech, then so be it. But I'll tell you this. I'm not making any apologies for what I'm saying, because the lack of morality, the lack of godliness within the White House has turned it into a slaughterhouse, as Steve Quayle often says. And from that slaughterhouse, and you know what? It's just not Obama. It's the people around him. And it's just not limited to his regime. It's the regimes before that sullied the House of the people. But you might ask how we got here. It's important to understand that. It's very important to understand that. We can go back to Kinsey and such, but think about this. If you look at the past 20 years plus, in 1983, 30% of Americans said that they knew someone who was homosexual. Through conditioning, by 2000, that figure had skyrocketed to 73%. So that's a huge leap. In 1985, only 40% of those polled said they were comfortable around individuals who practice homosexual behavior. But by 2000, you're up to 60%. Conditioning, folks. Tavistock Institute. Through Hollywood, through movies, through magazines, through newspapers, through your newscasts, through your churches. The mega churches who say, well, there are many ways to get to heaven, and who am I to judge? And don't forget, what would Jesus do? Jesus accepted the prostitute. Yeah, but he didn't accept her behavior.
Exactly.
All right. But those of us who really have had to deal with the issue of homosexual agenda, that issue over the years, if you're a moral person and you're a godly person, you just look at this in disbelief. The road leading to this grave threat that the homosexual agenda poses to Christianity, to our faith, to evangelism, to our religious freedom, the threat didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen, and it didn't happen at this one juncture leading to the Supreme Court decision. It's been part of a long-term strategy, and that's what you need to understand. It's part of a strategy implemented by radical homosexual activists, by the who are intertwined with the globalists, in an effort to dramatically transform America's perception of homosexual activity, homosexuality, and the traditional family. And they want to, and anyone who opposes homosexual behavior will be criminalized or labeled a criminal. That time is coming, folks. It is coming, and coming fast. A guy by the name of Gene Edward Veith wrote about the tremendous gains made by the homosexual activist movement. He said that homosexuality used to be considered a vice. Now even those it makes uncomfortable must now avow, recalling the Seinfeld episode, not that there's anything wrong with it. While those who think there's something wrong with it are considered to have a vice of intolerance, well, it is not us, the Christians, the people who oppose this behavior, who are intolerant. It is, and you can see it, it is the homosexuals themselves and the homosexual agenda. For when you have a couple of bakers who refuse to bake a cake because it's for a homosexual marriage because it is against their religious beliefs, they're fined $135,000. Who's the intolerant one now? Do you think that they did that on their own, those two women who filed the killing legal suit against the bakers? No, of course not. It's the people behind them. It's a larger issue. You see, marriage is not the only target. The target is Christianity. This is the American equivalent of ISIS decapitations and executions. This is the soft tyranny of that act. And if you look back, we can trace it back to a couple of guys. Well, we can go back to 1987, actually. And this is where I'm going to focus on very quickly here. There's a well-thought-out strategy that was devised in part by two homosexual activists, Marshall Kirk and Hunter Madsen. They publicized in two publications in a 1987 article. It was called The Overhauling of Straight America. In 1989, they published a book titled After the Ball. Okay. If you read both those works, you'll see how the radical homosexual activists have implemented the strategy laid out in those two publications to the letter. But if you go backwards from there, you'll find that they're being funded by some of the most powerful people in the world, the globalists, and in fact, there's communist ties as well, ties to the communist agenda. Because you see, it's just not. Well, it's bigger than everything. It's bigger. They want to take out the traditional American family. They want to criminalize any type of anti-homosexual speech. They want to muzzle us as Christians. They want to muzzle us as Americans. This is an assault on our constitutional rights. This is much bigger than you can even imagine. But with regard to those two people, Marshall Kirk and Hunter Madsen, they laid out a 6-point strategy. And they published it. And they did so knowing that everyone would read it. But no one paid attention. But see, here are the 6 points. Number 1, talk about gays and gayness. Now, these are their words, not mine. Talk about gays and gayness as loudly and often as possible. Portray gays as victims, not aggressive challengers. Give homosexual protectors a just cause. Number 4, make gays look good. Number 5, make the victimizers look bad. Number 6, solicit funds. The buck stops here. That is, get corporate America and major foundations to financially support the homosexual cause. You see, and I'm going to get emails. We're going to get emails, Joe and I, saying, why, with everything going on, why talk about this? Because at the very core, this is so much bigger. This touches every part of our society. This is the war. These are the front lines. We're on the front lines. And if we succumb to, regardless of what the Supreme Court says, well, if they say homosexuality, well, it's okay. Redefining marriage is okay. And we go along with that, we're done as a country. We're done as a church. We're done. We're done. Soulless. Our souls, we're done. That's why. That's why it's so important to support Coach Dave Dobbenmeyer. Get on his team. We're on his team. We support Coach Dave Dobbenmeyer 100%. He's the guy out there in the front lines. He's assembling the team. He's the one doing. You know, people say, well, what can we do about it? Hey, we got a good coach. Let's rely on the coach to put things together. But when you look at these points and understand how we've been played, how we've been gamed, how this is connected to the globalists, how this is, in fact, a part of the communist agenda. And the communist agenda is, in fact, part of the globalist agenda, the Illuminati agenda. And that, of course, is going to lead us into a one world order, one world religion. This is all part of it. If you don't think this is important, then you're wrong. Because it's more than one decision. And you see how this was set up. The skids were greased. The judiciary, minor judiciary, and the federal judiciary, they were greased by judges put in there knowingly, that would knowingly vote in favor of homosexuality. Oh, yeah, sure. How did it get to the Supreme Court? Well, there were some judges, of course, that ruled against it. You know, it wasn't 100% effective. But see, the Supreme Court is stacked. And Kagan and Ginsburg, they're not going to recuse themselves, despite officiating over homosexual unions. They're not going to do that. Anyway, one thing I want to get into is if you look at network television in 1971, you had Beverly Hillbillies, Green Acres. I'm trying to think, Petticoat Junction, Andy Griffith. They were fairly conservative, generally family-oriented shows. Now, I understand the problems. Okay, I get that. But look what Hollywood had done. You had Norman Lear come on the scene. Trace back Norman Lear with respect to his politics. And what we get? MASH, All in the Family. Oh, they were funny at the time. You think harmless. But MASH was not the first, but definitely the most blatant film. If you watch that, and you can remember that, but to openly ridicule Christianity, to openly promote homosexuality. I'm going to go back a step or two as well, because I think it's important to make reference to the Mattachine Society. That's M-A-T-T-A-C-H-I-N-E Society. This figures prominently into it, and this connects some important dots. You're not going to hear this elsewhere. The Mattachine Society was founded in 1950. It was one of the earliest homosexual organizations in the United States. Now, at the same time, there was the Chicago Society for Human Rights, which was also a homosexual organization. A guy by the name of Harry Hay, the Mattachine Society, and a group of Los Angeles male friends formed this group, this Mattachine Society, to protect and improve the rights of homosexuals. They operated in secret. Because of concerns for secrecy and their Marxist, communist ideology, they adopted the communist, they adopted the cell organization being used by the Communist Party of the United States. You don't think that the homosexual agenda doesn't have its roots in the Communist Party? There it is. Just connected this dot for you, this huge dot. And the you have to think too. During the Cold War, even back in the 50s, the anti-red, anti-communist atmosphere back in the 50s. The Mattachine Society's growing membership replaced the group's early communist model with a more traditional civil rights type of bias, or civil rights sheen to it. Because even though they were based in communism, they did not want to openly associate with that because of the sentiment against communism back in the 50s and throughout the Cold War. You have to go back to the founding where Hay thought of this idea of this gay or homosexual activist group, and this idea materialized back in 1948. He signed a petition for the Progressive Party candidate Henry Wallace. Hay spoke with other homosexual men about forming this gay organization that it was actually called Bachelors for Wallace. They referring to the presidential candidate Henry Wallace. Well, and I'm not going to get into all of this, looking at the time and everything, but please, if you really want to understand what's really going on, understand that the Mattachine Society is joined at the hip with the communist agenda back in the 50s. This is where it began. That's the political aspect of it. The scientific aspect of it is based on all lies by Kinsey. The other, and it goes back even further, as I mentioned, to World War II, where as referenced in the pink swastika, where the homosexuality in the Nazi Party was a tremendous. And don't forget that the core issue here, and Joe, you mentioned this, the Babylonian, certain the Babylonian. You can go back in history, and there's worship, God and goddess worship, pagan God and goddess worship. You have to understand how that plays into all of this if you want to go back, way into antiquity. But as we go back to the Mattachine Society, that was founded back in 1950, thought of in 1948, the founders of the Mattachine Society were communists. They were all communists. But they were all homosexuals. And they wanted to advance the agenda of homosexuality. So they used the template of communism, but then later changed it because of, or at least downplayed it because of the anti-communist mindset of Americans. Now, that society existed as a sole organization, headquartered first in Los Angeles and then back in 56 in San Francisco. Go figure. Chapters were then established in New York, D.C., Chicago, other locations. The actual society itself, because of internal discord, which you'll find rife among homosexuality and homosexuals, disbanded in 1961. But the goals of this society were to unify homosexuals isolated from their own kind, to educate homosexuals and heterosexuals toward an ethical homosexual culture paralleling the cultures of, and I quote, of the Negro, Mexican, and Jewish peoples. Lead the more socially conscious homosexuals to provide leadership to the whole mass of social variants, and to assist homosexuals who are victimized daily as a result of the oppressor. That's part of that shows you some of the background, and I think it's important. But the destruction, the moral debate that politicians and pundits refer to as the culture war in America is a very real, in every sense of the word. It's not just a phrase, some clever use of verbiage. No. On one side, there are those who believe in the traditional moral values, who believe in biblical standards, who believe that we're in the Word of God. Those are called Christians, right? They believe in the ultimate standard of right and wrong. We are defending historic moral principles and have the moral principles, historic moral principles that really have undergirded American society, since our existence. And we're fighting to preserve the integrity of our homes, our families, our way of life. But on the other side are those who believe that anything goes. They're men and women who will accept no civil restraint, no moral limits on their sexual freedom because they believe it's a victimless issue. The result is that we today, right now, as we sit here and as you listen to this, we are engaged in a life and death struggle. And this will become a life and death struggle for Christians. If you are a true Christian, you will not go along to get along. You will not accept the decision of the Supreme Court. You will not accept the abomination. You will not accept being forced to go against your religious beliefs, to bake a cake for a homosexual couple. You know, when our military is already, they got their hands full. They're engaged in mortal combat and have been, right? For their very existence. They're fighting that moral war, that moral imperative. The Bibles, no way. Homosexuality, come on in. This is absolutely ridiculous. Do you see how all of this is tied together? And don't forget, Joe, you had mentioned, you brought this to my attention, others have as well, and we talked about this yesterday. 1973, the American Psychiatric Association removed homosexuality from its list of emotional disorders.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it did.
Why? You know why? Was it because they had made some discovery that, oh, wait a minute, this is a medical issue? No. They buckled to political pressure.
Where did that pressure come from?
That pressure came from, actually, the legislators, the progressive / Marxist / if you want to call them liberals, but from the legislative branch. They came from the entertainment industry. It came from the globalists, and ultimately from the globalists. And a lot of it came from the Tavistock Institute through the various groups that are represented by the Tavistock Institute here in this country, whether it be the Trilateral Commission and the CFR. Through policies, through equal rights and civil justice and civil. Anytime you hear those words, think globalism. Mm-hmm. Okay, but between 72 and 78, as we saw this breakthrough here, at least 48 state legislators granted, and I quote, civil rights to homosexuals comparable to those accorded to ethnic minorities. And see, Greg Jackson makes it a point too, where, well, I don't want to get into that. Just go ahead and spread that video and look at the transcript of the video at HagmannHagmann.com. At least 20 states during that time period repealed their sodomy laws, and if you go back to 2003, the U.S. Supreme Court, in the case of Lawrence v. Texas, ruled that sodomy laws of Texas are unconstitutional. So, what happened? Well, the other states followed suit. And all across the country, openly homosexual political candidates have been elected to public office. I mean, where? I mean, everywhere, from city councils, school boards, to House of Representatives. And the big thing, in 2004, the state of Massachusetts, the city of San Francisco, well, they both began issuing marriage licenses to same-sex couples. The combined result today is that there's virtually no area of society where homosexuals don't have a highly visible presence. The gay rights platform, or as I would call it, the homosexual platform, in 1972, the 1972 platform of the homosexual movement alerted average Americans to where this whole thing was going, and this happened at what time? Right around Roe v. Wade. It included a program of sweeping changes to all of the institutions of modern society. And there were there's a gay and lesbian Gay and Lesbian Task Force during their march on Washington in 1993, if you might remember this. What were their demands? Very quickly, implementation of homosexual, bisexual, and transgender curriculum at all levels of education. This is why little Johnny knows how to put a condom on a cucumber. Excuse me for being blunt. Because you see, this is an artifact of this homosexual agenda. Lowering the age of consent for homosexual and heterosexual sex. You don't think that the homosexual men in this country want 12, 11, 10-year-old boys? Is that offensive to you? It should be. I hope it is. Because that's exactly what they want. They want legalization of homosexual marriages, custody, adoption. And this is, I'm just referencing the March on Washington in 1993, which is the planks. Custody, adoption, and foster care rights for homosexuals, lesbians, and transgender persons, but also the right to make them into homosexuals and lesbians themselves, the kids, the children. The redefinition of family to include the full diversity of all structured families, to redefine everything. Oh, and they wanted full access to the Boy Scouts of America. Let me ask you something, too, now that we're on this. Why in the world, does anyone out there know any Muslim bakers? Anyone have the temerity, the intestinal fortitude to go ask a Muslim baker to make
Someone did.
A penis-shaped cake for a homosexual wedding? What happened?
It was a news... What do you think happened?
No, I don't know. What happened?
They were turned away.
Oh, geez. Well, wait a second. Did Eric Holder, Department of Justice, did they, or the ACLU, or the SPCA...
Not only did those people not get involved, it was actually a kind of a non-story. It was like a story put out there for a laugh, like. It
was just for grins,
like.
Right?
I mean, as I said yesterday, I tried to keep as many voices out of my mind from news and media, unless it's something specific and someone specific I want to listen to. So I don't know what the level of coverage was. I'm sure that was a talking point through some of the mainstream media stations that day, but it wasn't, it wasn't continued to be pursued as would be a heterosexual baker refusing to make a homosexual wedding cake.
All right. Well, so a big zip, nothing, nada. Okay. Well, I think what we ought to do is get homosexual bakers, put them, or whatever. Or I'm sorry, get the Muslims out there in America. Hey, I know it might be against religious beliefs, but go ahead and we want a cake, or we want, whatever the case might be. And let's see what the Department of Justice does, or the ACLU, or whatever other institution does. You think they got the guts to go against the Muslims? Of course not. Why do you think it's all Christians? Have you asked yourself that? Why is it all Christians? Because of their religious beliefs. Do you think it's by accident? No. Do you think that these lesbians and homosexuals that go to these bakers and other businesses, do you think that they're being goaded by people and maybe greased by others, by other interest groups to go out there and to do this? Of course they are. You see, and I'm going to close with this. What everyone needs to understand, this effort to legislate special rights, it's not about equal rights, it's about special rights for homosexuals and lesbians. It's got nothing to do with protecting homosexuals, lesbians, transgendered, whatever weirdo type behavior. No. Homosexuals are already protected by law, just like everybody else. The push for special rights legislation is nothing more than an effort to legitimize and add respectability, to the homosexual, lesbian, transgendered, wacko lifestyle. But it changes the nature of both civil rights and natural rights, placing homosexuals into a class of their own, which is why each and every one of us must resist any attempt by this Supreme Court, by this government, by the state government, by the federal government, by your pastor, whoever, but by any legislative body to pass any legislation and rewarding people with rights on the basis of unnatural, that's right, I said it, unnatural sexual practices makes a mockery of our legal system and, more importantly, mocks God.
Well said. With that, we're going to take our break. We're going to come back from our commercial and take your calls at 661-244-9839. That is 661-244-9839. We want to hear what you have to say on anything we talked about today or anything that we did not cover that you would like to talk about. We also have some other news on the other side we could get into, but we will take calls if you guys do call in. We'll be right.
Hey, thanks for putting up with me during the second hour. I hopefully imparted some important information, background information for you. If not, well, I already heard from some people who said, well, that behavior exists in the heterosexual community too. I'm not going to argue the point. I've got, we can match statistics, we can match crime scene photos, we can match whatever you want to match, but the bottom line here is homosexuality in the eyes of God is an aberration. It's an abomination. And the Supreme Court has no right to redefine squat when it comes to marriage. And no court in the land has that ability. So you want to argue that? Let's argue on that level.
Well, I'll just say this. All sin, in habitual sin, living in sin, accepting of it, leads to more sin.
Right.
And just for that matter alone, we should be aware and understand.
And you know what? None of us look. Every one of us is born into sin, right? Mm-hmm. And we all sin every day. Mm-hmm. So we strive as Christians not to sin. We're not going to. I mean, if the sole measure of us getting into heaven was based on our daily behavior, that wouldn't work out too well. So, hence, obviously, and I'm not trying to make light of this, obviously, but that's why we had the ultimate sacrifice paid for us for our sins. I do want to thank Bob and Maggie and Doug C. For sending in Time Magazine. I asked the question, or I didn't know the answer to the question about the cover. Time Magazine published 2 articles on radical theology, the first appearing in October 1965, and the second was a cover story for April 8th, 1966, Easter issue, which asked, "Is God dead?" That from Bob and Maggie. Thank you so much for that. And Doug C. echoes that as well. But thank you for that. Thank you for the information. See, we get the most intelligent radio audience out there. We really do, and the most proactive. And I just thank God every day for each one of you listening. Thank you. And even Nancy, I thank you. I thank you too for your email.
Hit a quick news story here, then we'll take some phone calls. I just saw this recently. Mayor told police to stand down while Baltimore began to burn during riots. This comes from a new damning report that claims the city and the mayor of the city told police to stand off from rioters on Monday. Baltimore police also said they did not expect the police report into the death of Freddie Gray to be released this Friday. The streets of Baltimore saw only sporadic trouble last night, with 10 arrests reported during last night's curfew. Children returned to the public schools that they were closed all of Tuesday following Monday's fiery riots. Maryland Governor Larry Hogan deployed 2,000 National Guardsmen and 1,000 police officers to enforce a 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. curfew in Baltimore. It will keep the curfew for the next week. A group of about 100 defiant protesters remain in the streets after the curfew when law enforcement began to march. And the protest seemed to, I don't want to say be winding down, because we have people who are now protesting in Ferguson. We have New York City protests going on there also. And this is hopefully not the beginning of what it looks like. Hopefully this will die out. But
well, there's a connection between Ferguson and Baltimore, the riot connection. Did you see that in the folks? I don't know whether you saw this.
The social media.
Well, yeah, the social media analysis does suggest links between Baltimore and Ferguson violence. This came out by Fox News. Now, when I looked at this, and I spent Catherine Herridge, absolutely incredible, great investigative reporter, but I do believe they've got the reins tied pretty tight on these reporters. But if you look at her report that indicates this analysis of social media traffic in downtown Boston or downtown Baltimore Monday, the connections to the protests in Ferguson last year, there's a relationship there. Now, there's a firm, this data mining firm, that shared its findings exclusively with Fox, this according to this article. Okay, now having said all of that, and did I say this? They asked to remain anonymous because of the work that they do for the government. Boy, that statement right there should send alarm bells off of everybody's system. Data mining company, government work, wants to remain anonymous. What more do I need to say? But they found between 20 and 50 social media accounts in Baltimore that were tied to the peak period of violence in Ferguson. So what does this mean? I think it's deeper than that. Okay, and I because when I first saw this article early today, or late last night, I don't know when it was. The days run together, but what it looks like is you got two cities, 800 and some miles apart, and people are surprised. Everyone's acting surprised. Oh my goodness! You mean to tell me that? Well, the social media, there's a connection here. Of course it's being used to fuel violence, social media. Of course there's a connection. Of course there is this agenda, and it is pitting, essentially, it's multifaceted. Got this movement to go against the police by normal people. Let's blame the police. Now, look, we
could blame Canada.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding.
But it's something to see this take place. Then you've got, as you said, Stephanie Rawlings Lake, the mayor of Baltimore, saying, "Hey, stand down!" Right? Now, you're going to see denials. You're going to see contradictory news reports.
Oh, is that like the mayor saying, we're going to sit back and give these people time to destroy, and then saying, how dare you twist my words, saying we'll give them time to destroy?
It's, excuse me. The issue here, and I know Breitbart had talked about this, Baltimore, the riots in Baltimore. There's this myth, this agenda that's being pushed about race in this country, and it's being fueled by Obama. And I go back to the article that's on Hagmann.com about, and folks, do you remember this in 2012 and later, where my DHS source said that Obama was intentionally fueling the race wars. Okay, intentionally fueling the race wars. Now, who
putting a mask on there and getting them all tough cocktails? And
who knows? Maybe. Hey, I'm sure if he had boys, they'd look like every one of those is in Baltimore, right? And now,
that's based on his own statement from the Trayvon Martin case.
Right, I understand that. But if you look at what is taking place in Baltimore and Ferguson, and I do predict this, and with a heavy heart, I predict this, that Obama's his apparent inaction and his action by sending 3 members of his from Washington to the Gray funeral, it is showing exactly where he stands with regard to race, but ever subtly so. But the objective here, the bottom line objective, based on my assessment, is they will use the race riots to justify additional militarization of police, which, I mean, not that they have to do that, but then you get into the martial law scenarios. Of course, you saw the curfews yesterday. You saw a baseball game, not that I really care, I could care less, being played, without an audience or without without audience. That's not the right verbiage, right? Baseball game being played without people in the stands, whatever that means.
Without the audience, without the fans.
Without the fans, there you go.
Public.
Yeah. So is this, and then you've got people burning down the houses, looting CVS, burning CVS down, people that are, being burned out of their homes, and you've got reporters that are getting whacked. 5 got beat up. And
some by the police, too, I saw.
Yeah, yep. Now, so you've got chaos, and chaos is a tool of the revolutionary left, of the Marxist, of the communists. Chaos is a tool, or Satan is the author of chaos. So you can trace this all the way back to Satan, of course, but what we're watching, and people might equate this to, look at what happened in 1968. And you can get the books from U.S. News, or the book. In fact, I've got the cover posted within the article at Hagmann Hagmann.com. I've got the cover posted there. I've got the book. We got it at a bookstore in Western New York or in the Adirondacks. That actually had some interesting collections of books. But the bottom line here is it's the same agenda from the 60s, but now you've got the demonstrators of the 60s in power in this generation, who are pulling the strings and guiding the revolutionaries. So they've had really 2 generations to hone their skills. Now they're preparing to take us down, and this is tied to all laws, and this also serves in this convoluted way the domestic violence that's taking place as a result of these riots. Also leads to discussions about the southern border. Just follow me on this, and it also leads to the domestic threat. Now, and I don't know, and this is important to understand as well. And Joe, I'm not sure if I mentioned this at all yesterday, but the NDAA. Did we talk about this?
No.
Okay. The NDAA. There's a sunset provision that's due to expire in June. Let me just pull my notes from this, because I have my notes here and I just want to make sure I'm correct. Okay. The NDAA is set to portions of the National Defense Authorization Act are set to expire in June. Included in that sunsetting of these provisions is the mass surveillance, the collection, as they call it, the collection of metadata, which we know is much more than that. All right. Now, what's happening, what's going on under the radar right now is the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2015 is being renewed, and you've got multiple Republicans and Democrats, Carl Levin, and others attempting to, or saying, we're going to bypass Congress, we're going to bypass the normal methods of legislation and renew the NDAA in its entirety to 2020. I had the occasion to speak with my representative in the House Ways and Means Committee about this, who actually, that's in a way, that's in a large way, I was alerted to it that way, because he knows what I do, and boy, did he get an earful. I'm not sure I'm allowed in the Capitol building anymore. There's a lot of places after this last month I'm not sure I'm allowed into anymore without armed escort. But anyway, just be aware. Right now, there's this push on to prevent the sunsetting of the NDA provisions and to extend it to 2020 by both sides of the political spectrum, and saying that this has saved lives and has exposed terrorist plots when in fact it hasn't. So let's not take our eyes off the NDAA ball either, because it's extremely important. Okay, I wanted to bring that up. What were we talking about? Oh, the riots. The anarchy that's taking place right now. It's being fomented by the Marxists. You know, when you've got Che Guevara posters hanging in the back of Obama's campaign people in their offices, you know you're dealing with revolutionaries. And you got Che Guevara, not Che Guevara, but the Ho Chi Minh, or not Ho Chi Minh, the Christmas ornament on the Christmas tree in the White House, the Chinese communist. Escapes me. Name escapes me. But you can see what we're dealing with here. And even in the practical aspect of things, and you might think that this has nothing to do with anything, but look at how the difference in lifestyle. Look at the privileged of the Obamas in their state dinner, what they're serving for their state dinner versus what the government school children are getting on a daily basis. Look at the disparity. Look no further than that, and one might say, well, that one has nothing to do with the other, but of course it does. Of course it does. It's all part of that inherent structuring of the communist agenda and the communist belief system. You see, we've been captured from within, as I like to say, and I've always said, we've already been captured from within. This includes both parties. This includes John Boehner. This includes Harry Reid. This includes Mitch McConnell. This includes Lindsey Graham. All of these people we've been captured, and these people are working for the globalists. They're not working for the Americans. We know that. On the media side, you've got 6 corporations that dictate to all of us what we read, what we hear. 6 corporations. They're working for the globalists and working for a seat at the table of the globalist table. Okay, so all of this together. Some are unwitting dupes. One comes to mind, Chris Matthews. Others are more cunning, like Rachel Maddow. Others are complicit. Pick a name at Fox News. Others are knowing and part of the problem, but go along to get along. Think of Sean Hannity and Rush Limbaugh. Now, am I making any personal, am I cutting them down? No. I'm attempting to say, look, by the fruits you shall know them. So look at the fruits and look at what they're doing. And so we cannot put our trust in any of these people, whether they're media or whether they're government or regardless. We can't put our trust in any of these people. Which brings me, and I'm going to close out with this, as we get into talking about the criminalization of Christianity, talk about the criminalization of cash. At the core issue here is the centralization of everything, the control and centralization of everything. We ultimately will be responsible. The objective here is we are going to be beholden to a central authority that will dictate what we can and cannot say on air, and it's not going to be any longer by sponsors. Okay, in other words, I don't like what you're saying, so I'm going to write to your sponsors and say, boy, these are bad people. No. We are that worked in a capitalistic environment, but now we are in this soft tyranny in more of a Marxist environment, more of a communist Marxist environment. And I do understand the difference between the two, and I understand the similarities. I understand the words. Okay, but let me just use that communist / Marxist phrase, because I think people who are intellectually honest understand where I'm going with this. But how we're going to be silenced is through this legislation that will be the result of actions like the legitimization by the Supreme Court of homosexual marriage. that by these laws that are going to be in place by the judiciary, where you cannot, for example, speak out against the actions of a particular cult or religion, because that will be hate speech. Look at Canada. Think about Canada. And that speaking of Canada, and I didn't realize this until I really researched this, the 2004 homosexual legitimization, or by Massachusetts, the acceptance and by the governor, or by Massachusetts in 2004, was based on a court ruling in Canada. I thought that was rather interesting. Very interesting. At least it was structured that way. So since when did we become subjects of the Queen?
Let's go to the phones.
Yeah, let's do that.
All right, we're going to go to...
like I was on with Pastor Paul Begley, words keep falling out of my mouth. Make them stop, Joe. Make them stop. Let's go to the phones. Go ahead.
We're going to go to Montana. 406 area code. We're coming to you first. Live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hello, Doug and Joe.
Hey.
God bless you. How are you folks doing? I just wanted to make a comment about, this whole thing it's not unreasonable what's going on in this nation, but I think Jesus spoke of it when he said, if you were of this world, the world would love its own. But because you're not of this world, I've called you out of the world. You'll be hated by this world. And the bottom line is Satan in Scripture is spoken of as the God of this world. And the Lord prophesied that in the last days there was going to be, that Satan was going to make war with the saints and even overcome them at one point there. But it clearly, what we're seeing right now, it's unreasonable, like you said, beyond measure, that Christians aren't out beheading people, they're not raping people or selling people into slavery. And it's written in the Quran and everywhere else, these very things. And it's lawful for them to do these things, but nobody has a problem with them. And they hate homosexuals and are less merciful to them than Christians are. Christ wants to redeem them. They want to destroy everything that doesn't go along with them. But the reason that there's a madness against Christians and Jewish people is because those are the ones that are spoken of in God's book. And Satan wants to destroy the seed that's going to bring forth the promise. And it's going to get to a place where it's totally unreasonable beyond measure. And it says in the book of Revelation that everyone's going to worship the beast except those that are written in the book of life. Before it's over, the momentum and the deception is going to be so great that everyone's going to fall into the web of darkness that's not doesn't have the power of the Holy Spirit to stand against it, and doesn't have the inspiration of God to keep them and the Word to stand against it. Otherwise, everyone's going to fall for the great deception and the delusion that's coming.
Yes.
And when Jesus said there will be a tribulation so great, such as never was since the beginning of the world, and except those days would be shortened, no flesh would be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days will be shortened. I just believe that ultimately it's the reason why all these groups are going to gather against Christ and Christians is because they represent light, and everything else is under the web of Satan's influence. And Satan hates Christ and hates the Jewish people and hates Christians. So that's why there's going to be, ultimately, Jesus said, they're going to deliver you up to be afflicted, and they're going to kill you, and you'll be hated of all nations for my name's sake. And then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and hate one another, and because iniquity shall abound, the love of many will wax cold. But he that endures until the end, the same will be saved. And I know that there's a tremendous war planned against the righteous, and it's time for us to be overcomers, to buck up and stand in the strength of Christ. Because ultimately, we know that demise and the end of the wicked and the end, there's all through the Scripture, from the old prophets and the new ones, there's a word, a theme that says, behold, the day cometh. There's a day when it says God is furious. It says in Nahum, the Lord revengeth and is furious, and he will take vengeance upon his enemies. In Psalm 2, he says, why do the heathen rage? The people imagine a vain thing. The kings of the earth set themselves. and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us. And it says, and behold, he that sits in the heavens shall laugh, for the Lord will have them in derision. There's a theme all through the scripture in Malachi. He says, behold, the day cometh that shall burn like an oven, and all of the proud and all that do wickedly will be like stubble in that day. And the day that cometh shall burn them up and leave them neither root nor, but unto you that fear my name will the Son of Righteousness arise with healing in his wings. And that's a theme throughout the scripture, the day cometh. There's a point when it says God is going to roar from on high and shout as he that treads the grapes. And there's a day coming when he's going to shake the heavens and the earth, and everything that's wicked and all the proud are going to be given to the sword. And we need to hold steady in Christ, because I believe that there is a deliverance for those that walk with Christ. The Psalm 91 and many, many promises with Esther, and so many. The enemy's not going to have his way. He's going to do his one last fling, and then it says, and the devil that deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are, and shall be tormented day and night forever and ever. That's the end of the devil and all of the wicked. And so we need to hold steady with Christ, and we have one short run, and we'll all be standing before the Lord, and the books will be opened, and all that are not written in the book of life will go into the lake of fire. But those that are written in the book of life and have been faithful unto death are going to have the crown of life forever and ever, in an eternal kingdom where there's no more death, no more sorrow, no more crying, no more pain. The former things are done away. And
very well said.
This is very intense hour we're coming to, but by the strength of Christ, we will overcome. We will overcome.
Yeah, well, we're already fighting from a position of victory. It's just getting through this gauntlet of organized evil, the secret masters of the dark empire of secret societies, the occult hierarchy, the black adepts of the cult of evil, the ancient Luciferians. This is what we're up against. I mean, at its core, this organized evil that sits at this dark empire, and within this dark empire, the secret societies, the Fabian socialists, which are in power today, which represent the Luciferian agenda. That's the biggest part of this. That's what we're fighting against. And, this is a 5,000 or 6,000 year old agenda. And, so it's a sinister plot to change the world. It's to orchestrate this Luciferian conspiracy for world government. And we call it the New World Order, but they seek to establish conditions on Earth that will be, conducive to this kingdom of the Antichrist, as you had mentioned. And this is the bigger plan. This is what the insiders call the great plan. But yeah, you're right. We will overcome, but we must stand in the gap in the meantime.
And anybody that thinks that the Most High God spoke and the universe exists, humbles himself to look on the heavens and the earth. It says, counts all the nations as but the dust of the balance, insignificant to the weight, one way or another, stretches forth the heavens like a curtain, and as a vesture he'll gather them up and cast them aside. That anybody that thinks that they can come against the mighty God and win is an absolute fool. The Lord God gave them their breath, and with a word he can take it away, and they return to dust. He is the glorious and mighty King. And anything that comes against him is going to be dashed in pieces like a potter's vessel.
Amen. Amen. Very well said. Very well spoken. Appreciate it, my friend.
God bless you.
God bless you as well.
Have a great night.
And folks, just remember the implementation of a homosexual agenda is not just a political concern, but a very profound spiritual concern, in that homosexuality is a spiritually deadly condition that threatens, for a number of reasons, its zealots, its practitioners. It's got the capacity to do great evil to a morally ordered society. That the homosexual has been used as an instrument of destruction by dark spiritual forces throughout history, and very wicked men and women who are at their core, human agents of evil have actively supported the rise of the homosexual, GLBT, whatever lobby. They've been channeling funding from tax-exempt foundations to support the political and ideological assault on the natural moral order of on Earth. I'm not talking New Age now. I'm talking about biblical. And it's homosexuality is one of the weapons in the armory of evil, in the quiver of arrows, in its assault on God, the family, on God's creation. It's a very wicked. It's fundamental to in its wickedness and evil strategy, and its intent on collapsing Western civilization, on Western morals, and look what it's done throughout history. Even the word. The ancient interdiction of homosexuality was predicated on Scripture, and the condemnation by God that it is one of the most loathsome sins should tell you something. The term sodomite, that was very damning, is very damning when used the essentially, the grave connotations attached to that word. Okay, that's one of the main reasons why the homosexual lobby has so vigorously attempted to render certain speech politically incorrect and hate speech. So just remember where all of this originates. And, it's unfortunate that we don't have, or seemingly we don't have people with network microphones saying this, making this a very godly argument, if you will, or position, a scriptural position, a biblical position, not a political one, but one that addresses the very soul of every man and woman. And that's what it's all about. And you know what? The way I look at it is, if we care about our fellow man, we should be really caring about this, shouldn't we? If we're Christians, and that the same goes for abortion, and we must take a stand.
Let's go back to the phones. We're going to go to area code 903. 903, you're up next and live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. 903. All right.
Sounds like we're doing dishes.
We'll go to
what do we have?
Area code 530. 530. You're up next, live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hi. Thank you for taking my call, Doug and Joe.
Thanks for calling.
My name's Melissa, and I live in California. And, Doug, when I heard you talk about your uncle, it just upset me so bad because I can really relate to that. I'm sorry. I'm emotional. This whole thing is just so disturbing. In the early 70s, I gave my heart to Jesus when I was 14, and we lived in San Francisco. One day I was walking down the street not long after. I saw two men holding hands, and I just says to God, why don't they know what they're doing is wrong? And God said to me, he said, there's going to be a disease that will kill them. And at this time, I was very young. I didn't even know if it was God or not, and I never told anybody. And when I started seeing things start to happen, then my brother came down with AIDS. And before he died, I told him what God had told me. And he says to me, why didn't you ever tell me that? I says, would you have believed me? He said, probably not. But before he died, he said, being gay was a lie. Okay, then my sister also was gay. 3 years ago, her lover was cheating on her, so my sister was a retired Richmond Police Department cop, became a U.S. Marshal, took her gun to her head, and shot herself. So, being homosexuality robs families. I will never be an aunt. My children will never have cousins. My mother will never have more grandchildren. Homosexuality has robbed my family.
But Melissa, and I totally agree with you on this, but have you ever had anyone say, but they could have been heterosexual and the same thing could have happened? Has anyone said that to you?
That they could have, I'm sorry, you blanked out there.
Okay. Has anyone said, well, homosexuality was just merely a coincidence, we'll say? They could have been heterosexual and done the same thing, had the same thing happen, in terms of suicide or whatever. Has anyone said that to you? And if so,
no.
How did you Okay.
No.
Okay.
But,
because, homosexuality has a lot of unseen, or people tend not to see the ramifications that are not so
that's
obvious.
That's right. Also, in 1 Corinthians 6:9-11, it says, "Do you not know that the unrighteous will not inherit the kingdom of God? Do not be deceived. Neither fornicators, nor idolaters, nor adulterers, nor homosexuals, nor sodomites, nor thieves, nor coveters, nor drunkards, nor revilers, nor extortioners will inherit the kingdom of God." Now, if you were born homosexual, like they like to say that they are, were you born a thief? Were you born a drunkard? Were you born a covetous? Were you born a reviler? No.
No, not at all. And, of course, the comeback to that, Melissa, is that, well, science has proved that homosexuality is a DNA or genetic trait, which is a lie that's being propagated by those very people who are, attempting to promote that agenda. So you're exactly right in your assessment, Melissa. Thank you. I mean, and I'm sorry you had to go through all of that. I mean, it sounds like you went through just you saw this up close and personal.
Yes. And when you were talking about your uncle, it just got me so angry up inside because of what I've gone through too, and I can feel what you've gone through, and I know what it's like. And I just pray that God just heals your heart.
Well, thank you. And prayers with you as well. And, we all have to look at this as the spiritual battle, I believe, is of what it is. And Melissa, we just have to really pray. But we also have to act and stand up as Christians.
Yes.
As we really do. And I could tell in your voice you're very passionate, and you're just a very passionate person. And we need to turn that passion into action. We really do.
Yes, I've already joined Coach Dave's website and.
Yeah, that's great.
I'm praying and helping him any way I can.
Well, God bless you.
I'll let you guys go so you can take some other calls, but thank you so much for listening to me.
Thanks for sharing your very personal story. Thank you so much.
Thank you for calling. Have a great night.
Thank you. God bless you both.
God bless.
God bless you too. All right, 804, we're coming to you now. You're live on the Hagmann Hagmann Report.
Hey.
Is that me?
Hi. That's
Hi, guys.
Well, hello.
I just wanted to, it's Maria here, and I just wanted to mention something. One time I got to hear Nicky Cruz preach. You know he's a gangster that David Wilkerson led to the Lord. And he talked about how he'd seen with homicides that with a heterosexual one, they might stab a guy 4 or 5 times, With homosexuals, it could be 30, 40, 50 times. There's just something about them that goes over the top. And you see an example of that with in the book When the Wicked Sees a City. This is a pastor in San Francisco. He found out the church organist was a practicing homosexual, and he fired him. Well, the guy sued him. I understand suing for your job or whatever, but they wound up getting hate death threats for years. The church was vandalized, and they had a riot. At one point, they grabbed the pastor's wife and were pulling him into this crowd of angry men, and the churchmen were able to pull her back out to safety. I mean, hair-raising stuff, and the children were traumatized. And then in the middle of the night, they firebombed the pastor's home while everybody was sound asleep, and they barely escaped with their lives. Well, I can understand if somebody gets angry because they lost their job, but to firebomb a home and put this kind of thing through, that is so over the top as a reaction.
Sure.
So that fits with what happened to your uncle. And the other thing is that in the Bible, when you see Israel falling away from God, turning and going to the Canaanite religions, they had temple prostitutes. They were adults and children, men and women, boys and girls. So when you get into the occult and when you get into paganism, you wind up with homosexuality and pedophiles, and you also wind up murdering children because they sacrifice babies to Moloch and other gods. So as our country gets more pagan, anti-Christian, and more pagan, then this stuff is going to take over as a natural process, and they're all joined together. It's all connected together. It's all part of paganism. The only solution is for hearts to change and people to turn back to God. And God bless your first caller. He was wonderful, by the way.
Oh yes, very articulate. Yep.
And I just also, when it comes to hard times, John Huss, I've read of his biography. He was burned at the stake. He did not die screaming in those flames. He died singing a worship song. So God's grace is absolutely amazing, and we need to trust that His grace really is sufficient for us no matter what happens.
Very well said. And folks, on the line with us is author Maria Knies, author of Prepare for Persecution. If you go to our website, at the bottom of our page, our home page, is her book. It's actually redone a little bit. Prepare for Persecution: How to Become Spiritually and Emotionally Prepared. Your book addresses a lot of the preparations we need to make in order to overcome what we're facing. And then I want to thank you for that. And I recommend that, ladies and gentlemen, everyone grab a copy of her book, Prepare for Persecution. Go to HagmannHagmann.com on the bottom right. And because I have a copy right here, it does. Your book does tell Christians how to handle this. It is a manual for battle. It's a battle manual, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I learned it in the trenches. I learned it from the scriptures, but I also learned it in the trenches when God came through for me.
Well,
things seemed impossible.
And folks, knowing the inside story, this is a book that should be in everyone's library or everyone's briefcase. Well, don't keep it in your library. Keep it on you. Keep it on you next to your Bible, because it does offer the step-by-step or the steps to take, I should say, to fight the battle, to fight properly the battle and effectively the battle in which we face. Prepare for Persecution, how to become spiritually and emotionally prepared. How important is that? Very good. Actually, you brought us almost to the end of the program. So any closing thoughts since we have you here at the end of the program?
Yes, that God is exceedingly abundantly above and beyond all that we can ask or imagine. And we need to remember that when the bad guys look overwhelming, they are so small compared to God. I mean, even the devil himself. Jesus said, if I by the finger of God cast out Satan. The finger of God. You know, it's like squishing a bug. It's not a wrestling match. We need to keep that perspective. We've got to keep the perspective of eternity, the big picture, the really big picture, eternity.
Right.
That's what'll keep us on track. The other thing is, it says the fear of the Lord's the beginning of wisdom. If people are not rightly related to God, they literally cannot think straight. So when we look around us and people say stuff that looks crazy, that it looks insane, it literally is, because if they're not rightly related to God, if they don't have the fear of the Lord, they can't think straight. They have no wisdom. They have no understanding. So we shouldn't be shocked when we see it. I still am, but I mean, that's what the Bible tells us.
That's right. That's, yes, and you're
so
so
pray
right.
for them to know the Lord. That's all the best we can do is pray for them, God to soften their hearts and open their eyes.
Well, amen. All right. Well, thank you.
No matter how vicious they are, God can reach amazing people. He's reached hitmen and, terrible people. And
yes. And soften the hardened, even the hardest of hearts, and make changes.
And those guys know there's something wrong with them. In many ways, it's the respectable, self-righteous ones that are impossible to reach because they think they're okay. They don't know they need God. They don't know they've done anything wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you've actually done it. You've closed out our program. I want to thank you for your call. God bless you. Thank you so much for the call and all the calls before. You take care. God bless.
God bless you guys. Thank you for all you're doing.
Thank you. All right. And that caller was Maria Canese. Maria Canese, Prepare for Persecution. I would definitely recommend everyone grab that book, to buy that book off of Amazon. Click on the link at hagmannhagmann.com. It'll take you directly to Amazon. And as usual, you're gonna have people reviewing, these stooges that'll put bad reviews on books that are, against they're Christian books. So anyone who has read the book, definitely put a review in there, a positive one, to avoid that from happening. Tomorrow, Paul McGuire. I can't wait. Paul is on fire. Watch tomorrow for the website, Hagmann Hagmann website, with respect to something related to Paul McGuire. It's going to be great. So,
till tomorrow, stay safe. God bless. Have a great night.
Good night, everyone.